Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Beckham. The subject here is making an effective selection. There's a number of ways we can do it, but let's keep things basic and simple, which often work best, with the Polygonal Lasso tool. This image is a life-size wooden soldier, and I've used this particular image to demonstrate the Polygonal Lasso tool for many years. It's the perfect candidate for this. We often wish to use cutouts in our creative photography, and some of those are a lot easier to do than others. Cutting out birds, for example, from a bright blue sky is going to be pretty easy using the Magic Wand tool. But how do we approach this task when the subject is fussy, like our soldier, and so is the background? We do have a number of tools to do this, and Select and Mask, which we use for fine detail, doesn't seem to work quite so well with fussy, hard-edged subjects like our soldier. Sometimes a simple and basic approach works every time. If you look over on the right hand side into the layers, you can see I'm working on a smart object. So if you've already worked your image through Camera Raw, then retain that raw status for as long as you can. Now I'm going to go to the other side of the screen and pick up my Polygonal Lasso tool. Sometimes you may not see it in the toolbox, of course. It's grouped with 3 other tools, but there it is. I'll select that. Now the key to using the Polygonal Lasso tool is to zoom in really close to the subject. To take our time, don't rush this. Make the selection bit by bit, which I'll demonstrate, and we save both the selection and the image regularly. Yes, we can save selections with an image and add one selection to another. And then once completed, we don't actually use our selection to discard pixels. The clever way is to work with a layer mask. Keep those pixels up your sleeve for a time when you spot a mistake, which we all do from time to time. Remember, masking does exactly what it says. It masks and doesn't remove pixels, which means we can add them back at any time. A couple of things we need to do here. First up, go to the top of the screen and you can see 4 icons along the top. If I hover over this one and keep still, this one will say New Selection. The next one is Add to a Selection. The next one is Remove from a Selection. And finally, we've got Intersect a Selection. The one we want is this one. We're going to be adding one selection to another. And as soon as we've made a start, you'll see a little plus appear alongside the icon for the Polygonal Lasso tool. And of course the next thing we need to do is to zoom into the image very large to start the process. Now this is where keyboard shortcuts really come into their own, because it's quite common to select a tool, then decide we want to zoom into the image or zoom out or zoom in more. Well, I'm going to use my Alt and Spacebar keys together. You can see that as I hold them, the Polygonal Lasso tool is just changed to the zoom. I can click and drag over the hat of the soldier because I need to get it quite large, something like that. And as soon as I release the keys, I'm back with my Polygonal Lasso tool. There's also going to come a time when I'm going to need to move around the image, and what we do then is touch the spacebar. The hand appears and we can move the image. Because it's quite common, I think, and I'm doing it right now, to go back to my zoom and say, could I go bigger? No, because when it goes like that, it's getting just a little bit too vague. So I'm going to use a 3-finger shuffle here. Control, Alt, Spacebar, and the zoom is in minus. I'll click back down because I was in the right place to start with. So there we are with the picture zoomed in. I've got my Polygonal Lasso tool. So let's take a look at this technique. When we click on the picture, the Polygonal Lasso tool leaves this stretchy thread. The technique is on curves we move a short distance. So I'm clicking, 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 clicking. As I get on lesser curves I can move slightly further. So click, click, just inside the edge. We're going to lose a pixel or two, but that's not going to be any problem. So we gradually work around the edge as careful as we can. And when we get to the other side here, now I've got to make my steps shorter. Click, 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 click. Now we've got quite a straight edge, so I'm going to go down there, click, click, and while I've got this on the screen, I'm going to go click and back to the start. What I'm going to do is put that selection in the bank. It's quite easy if we try to do this in one go to lose our selection. So we don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is save this selection now. Now we do that by going to a logical place. After all, we've made a selection. Let's go to the select menu. And I'm going to choose to save a selection. I'll call it soldier. And you notice down here we only get the choice of new channel at the moment. No problem with that. We can just click OK. And of course, to go hand in hand with that, we're better off to save the image and maybe give it a slightly different name, so we've always got the original. I'm going to save this as Soldier 001. Now we can move on. So holding that spacebar, I can click and drag. I can move my image to a more comfortable position. Now we're going to add one selection to another. So I'm going to start within the other selection. I'm going to leave it somewhere here so I can see where the start is fairly easily. I'm going to go to the edge and I'm going to continue masking. Click, click, click. We can actually do quite fine detail with this, very fine detail in fact. Shorter steps around the curves. But at any time, if your hand gets into an awkward position, don't struggle on. Just join one selection to another. Now we don't have to stop every time and add every single selection to the previous, but I'll demonstrate it now so you can see the process. I'm going to go back to my select menu and choose Save a Selection. We're offered here to make a new channel and a new selection, but what we want to do is add one to the other, so we gradually build up the selection around our soldier. So in the channel box here, if we drop it down, we'll find the selection we made just a few moments ago, and then by using Replace Channel, we just don't want to make a new selection here, we can add one selection to another. And then another nice keyboard shortcut, which most people should know, Control S, will always save an image over the top of the previously saved version. So in that short few steps, I've got both of my selections created, and I've got my image stored. So if at this stage I wanted to leave my computer and come back and do more of this cutout another day, I can do that. And as you can see, I've closed it down just to demonstrate exactly how we get our selection back. And it's not a bad idea to do this. If you're doing a piece of work that becomes a little bit tedious, leave it. Come back the next day and do a bit more. So I'm going to go up to File and I'll go to Recent here, because in my case it should be sitting at the top. There's the one we was working on. And what I'm going to do here is go straight to my Select menu, down to Load Selection, find the soldier in the channel and click OK. And there we are, back to where we started. So to continue the process, I would zoom in yet again, as big as I can, one down from there, so that's about as large as I can get and be comfortable. I've still got my little plus. I'll just do the curve of the face here, starting up there. So here it's click, click, click. You can see that although we've got a tool here that makes a selection in straight lines, in actual fact we can go around almost any curves we wish. Now I would just take my time and I would do this all the way around the edge of this soldier, even going around fine detail. Because what makes a cutout stand out from the crowd is when you do the small things like this. And I'm doing it very carefully because I'm thinking about an aircraft I cut out once, and I cut around the antenna which was protruding from the cockpit. And when the image was judged in a camera club competition, the judge didn't think it was a cutout because it was too well done. Well, that was a compliment in itself, I suppose, but it also demonstrates, if I can say that, attention to detail is important when we're doing this sort of work. So now I've done another part of my selection. I can go back to the menus, go back to the select menu, save my selection, choose the one I want to save, which is soldier, OK that, Control S, and I can move on. There's not a great deal more I can say about making these selections. Now, as you can see here, I've brought you down to the legs of the soldier, because when we get to the straight edges and we start to add our selections here, of course the process gets very quick, because we can do quite large areas extremely quickly. And of course each time we would add one selection to another. Now I'm going to finish off making my selection, and I'll be back in no time from your point of view. So here we have my soldier back on screen, and the selection is fully created, but of course it's hidden at the moment because I need to load it from the select menu. I've saved this as a second version, and I've corrected my little typo where I had an I instead of the O of soldier. We've still got a smart object on the right hand side, but assuming that I completed my selection and I'm coming back another day, if we go to the select menu, load selection, pick it up and OK, there's the selection around the outer edge. It doesn't take anywhere near as long as you think, but a little bit of care in creating it is not a bad idea. When we look at an image like this, if we were to look at the edge of the drain pipe here, the image looks sharp, but if I pick up my zoom and I zoom in very tight, you can see that the edges are not sharp at all. They're actually quite graduated. That's a little bit too far. I'll go back down one. You can see there's at least a pixel there, and probably 2 or 3 in some places. So before we start to apply a selection, in our case we're going to apply a mask, which effectively will remove the soldier, we need to feather the edge of the selection line. And we can do that, and we have done that in many videos in this set, using select and mask. But if I go to the top of the screen, we don't have select and mask. It's because at the moment I don't have a selection tool selected from the toolbox. Because I retrieved a new image and I picked up my move tool and then my zoom, as soon as I pick up any of the selection tools, doesn't matter which one, then the select and mask will jump back up there. We can select it. All we really need is 1 pixel of feather. It doesn't matter how we look at this, but if we wanted to look at it on layers, that's what it's going to look like in a few seconds. I'm just going to overtype this with 1 pixel of feather in that selection line. It just looks more natural when we finish the work. Click OK, and we're ready to move on. Now, what a lot of people may do at this point would be to cut out the background. Now, to do that you would need to inverse the selection. Let me do that quickly. Select inverse. Then what we could do is use Control X and cut out the background, but in actual fact Control X isn't working, and that's because we're working on a smart object. So if we really did want to cut out the background, we're going to have to rasterize that layer, but we're going to be working with a mask, so we don't have to worry. But look what happens when I apply a mask now that I've inversed that selection. I'm going to go to the layers on the right hand side, down the bottom, and apply the mask. Now that's happened to me a number of times over the years. Don't worry if it does happen to you. All we've got is black where white should be and white where black should be. We can easily invert, don't get that word confused with inverse, invert by switching white for black. We'll find that in the image menu at the top of the screen, but Control I, there's our soldier floating on a transparent background. I've picked up the zoom tool and we can just zoom in and take a look at the quality of the cutout we have, and I hope you'll agree it looks pretty good. So what we would be doing at this stage, of course, is making sure that the work we have done is saved. So we would probably be making a different save here, maybe Soldier 3, but at the very minimum you need to hit Control S to save over the top of the previously saved version, because we know when we're working with a mask we can hold the Shift key and we can turn the mask off and back on just by clicking the mask. We know we can hold the Alt key and we can select the mask if we need to do work directly on the mask, which sometimes we do, and we can click the little eye to bring it back. And we need to remember too that even if we lose the mask a little bit later on, we can always go back to the select menu, load a selection, and that's going to remain there until we decide to remove it. So even now I can retrieve my selection if I needed it. Now I'd like to use my soldier transparency to demonstrate layers. So what I'd like to do here is to actually apply the mask. Now we've got a smart object, so the first thing I need to do really is to rasterize that. So I'm going to go to the right and choose to rasterize the layer. Then I'm going to drag my mask down into the bin, which seems a very odd thing to do, but we get a little panel appear and we've got three options. The first one is, do we want to apply the mask, which is the one we want, and of course we can tick this so it doesn't appear again. We can cancel it if we've just done something wrong, or we can delete the mask if that's really what we want to do. Here we want to apply it. If you look at the layers on the right hand side as I apply it, of course once I do this I do lose my ability to repair any unforeseen mistakes, but I've had a good look around and I'm quite happy with the selection I've made. So let's apply it. There's my transparency. We'd need to save this as a Photoshop file to retain the transparent nature of the background. If I were asked what was the key ingredient to make a successful selection, I would say patience every day of the week and twice on Sundays. If we just take our time and do really good quality work, then the finished image that we're producing is going to be pretty good. Anyone can make a successful cutout if the image is going to be used 3 inches by 2 inches on a website. If we're going to print the image 28 inches on the long side, it's a different matter. So just be patient, take your time, and you'll make superb cutouts, and quite often the manual way often works better.